Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com, and here are some extreme Mac productivity ideas. MACMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 2,000 supporters. Go to MACMOST.com/Patreon. There you could read more about it, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. Now, I frequently do videos that include productivity tips, and every once in a while I have an idea that's just too extreme for most people. In fact, some of these ideas are so extreme you just have to be crazy to even try them. Out of all the ones I'm going to show you, there are only 2 that I've actually adopted. Some of these others, though, may be appealing to some people, especially if you're having trouble focusing on your work. This first one will give you an idea of what I mean. Say you've got a lot of tabs open in Safari. This is a common problem. I often see people with tons of tabs open, and this can be a big productivity drain. Now, to force yourself into better habits managing your tabs, you can go into Safari, Settings, and then if you go to Tabs, there's a setting here for automatically closing tabs. But you can actually set it to after 1 day. So any tabs that you have open will close after 24 hours. This not only keeps the window cleaner with fewer tabs in it, but it forces you to think about tabs more. You can't just have a tab open and then expect it to always be there. You have to force yourself to bookmark it or add it to your favorites bar or do something else. Now, if you get a lot of email, you may have different techniques for dealing with that. But a lot of people fail there and just have an inbox filled with messages. When you constantly have email coming in, it can be very distracting. You could simply turn off notifications for mail, of course, turn off the badge in the dock on the mail icon and all that. But you can deal with it more directly by going into Mail and then Settings. And then in General, you've got a setting for Check for New Messages. And that can be set to automatically, meaning that it's always going to update. But you can also set it to manually. When you do, you have to specifically click the button in Mail right here. This means you can continue working and Mail won't interrupt you telling you there's new messages. Only when you're ready to handle email can you go to it and then load the new messages. Now, this is one of the 2 things that I actually do. I practice something which I call inbox zero, which means different things to different people. What I mean by it is that every time I check my email, I completely empty out my inbox. So, for instance, if this is what I see when I go into Mail, I would handle these 2 messages and clear it out. If it's something I can't deal with right now, I can set a reminder for it. Or if it's something I need to save, maybe I'll save it as a PDF or put it in a special folder. But I always clean my inbox out. So it always looks like this when I'm done with Mail. And note what I did there is I archived messages. I don't bother with a complex folder structure over here. It's either in my inbox or it's archived. 99% of the time, I don't ever need to see that email message again. So why am I wasting time trying to categorize it? If I need an email later on, I can always find it by searching. Now, some people consider inbox zero to be pretty extreme, but what you can do that's even more extreme is you can go into Mail, Settings, and then go to Rules. And then you can add a rule and have it so that if a message is received and it's greater than a certain number of days old, like maybe just 1 day old, then you can move it automatically to a different folder, like say, for instance, your archive folder. So this is similar to those tabs in Safari. Email messages are going to automatically archive. This could be bad if you miss an email that was important, but the whole idea here is to train yourself to handle your email in such a way that you're clearing out your inbox all the time and not letting things hang around. The point of this rule is it for never to actually be used. It's kind of a threat that's hanging over you, so you have to handle your email promptly. See, I told you these were pretty extreme productivity tips. Now, you can also limit yourself in other ways. You can go into System Settings and set up screen time. So the whole idea here is to spend less time using certain apps or viewing certain content. You can certainly use this to limit your use of apps. So you can set up app limits here. Let me add one. I can pick specific apps and limit the amount of time that I use them each day. And yes, I can go in and override this. It's my account. I'm the admin. But it takes a few steps to do that. And if you're serious about productivity, you're not going to override these limits. You're going to use them to help you focus more. You could also go into Content and Privacy. And here you can limit which websites you go to. So you can add websites that you don't want to take up time viewing on your Mac. So it could be the case of simply where you want to make your Mac into your productivity machine. And it's okay for you to use another device like your iPhone or iPad to actually go to these things. Well, when you're working on a Mac, you don't want to be distracted by them. Now, Macs are different than other devices in that it's easy to have multiple screens on your Mac. As a matter of fact, this used to be a productivity hack to actually get more screens. And for a while, I was even up to 3 screens. But then I discovered that it really was a productivity negative for me. There were more distractions, more things going on. Even if you're using 2 or 3 screens now, you may want to try going down to just 1 screen. After all, productivity is often about focusing on exactly what you're doing right now, and having multiple screens with multiple windows is going against that. And when you go down to 1 screen, you may want to experiment with only using 1 app at a time. So here's what I mean by that. So I've got Safari here, but it's a window. I can have other apps open. But if I go to full screen mode with this Safari window, then the entire screen is taken up just with Safari. There can't be any other windows here. What if I put all the apps that I'm using in full screen mode? So I've got Notes here in full screen. I've got Mail here in full screen. Now I can use Control and the right and left arrow keys, or just Command Tab, just as before, to go between these apps and just focus on 1 app at a time. And now here's the other productivity idea that I actually do use. This is what my desktop usually looks like. There's nothing there. I've gone into Settings here in the Finder and I've turned off everything on the desktop, and I simply don't store files in the desktop folder. Everything's in my Documents folder. So my desktop is always clean and there's nothing there to distract me. I'm not even using any widgets here. Now, another thing you can do in System Settings is to set focus modes. So the default focus mode is Do Not Disturb, and really you don't get any notifications when you're using Do Not Disturb. You can have it scheduled to be in the evening, but there's no reason you can't have this on all day long if you want. After all, these are just notifications. It doesn't stop things from happening. You can still go and check your email when you actually need to. It's just you're not going to be bothered when a new message comes in. And you can create other focus modes. So, for instance, if you want to have a mode where only a few people can message you, or only 1 or 2 apps can send you a notification, you can actually set that up in here and then use that while you're working. And the next thing you may want to do is look at the apps you have installed and maybe uninstall them. I'm particularly thinking of apps that could be distracting, like messaging apps that you have on your phone anyway. So you don't need people reaching you on both your phone and your Mac. You can think of your Mac as your productivity machine. Get rid of the apps that aren't going to add to your productivity and leave those all for another device. And remember, for apps you get in the App Store, you can actually remove them from your Mac and add them back very easily. So let's delete this app right here, and now it's no longer on my Mac. But notice I can just click right here to reinstall it from the App Store. So it doesn't have to be a big deal to remove an app and then maybe focus on productivity when you really need to for a few days, and then add the apps back. Now, I've mentioned a few times the idea of dividing things up between your Mac and other devices, like maybe having some things on your iPhone and not having them on your Mac, like some messaging apps or games or things like that. One of the things you may want to think about doing then is to not have your iPhone available to you easily while working on your Mac. Maybe have a drawer that you put it in. Maybe shut it off and only turn it on later in the day. Or maybe put it in another room. Here's another way to encourage you to focus on your work on your Mac. Try changing how your screen looks. If you go into System Settings and then you go to Accessibility, go to Display, and at the bottom of Display you've got color filters. So for instance, try turning them on and then changing to Grayscale. When you do, everything of course is going to be black and white. Think of how less likely you are to go to, say, watch a YouTube video when your screen is gray and you have to go through several steps to go back to here to turn off color filters. And obviously this isn't a good idea for all kinds of work. For instance, if you're doing graphics work, you don't want to switch to black and white. Now, another place we're distracted is when we have to search for stuff on the web. But unfortunately, we have to search for stuff a lot of times for work. But you get all sorts of things in web results, including, of course, lots of ads, videos, and all of that. So you may want to consider alternative search engines. For instance, DuckDuckGo has a much cleaner look here. Or you may even want to pay for search. There are search engines where instead of seeing ads, you pay a monthly fee, and it may be worth it if it increases your productivity. Now, another thing you may want to do when working on your Mac is to wear headphones and listen to white noise. Some people feel white noise helps us concentrate. Plus, of course, if you're working in a somewhat public environment, like in a cubicle at work or you have to work out in public like at a cafe, then your headphones are kind of a signal to other people to not bother you. Now, of course, you can find white noise in a variety of places, but you already have it on your Mac. If you go into System Settings and you go into Accessibility and then Audio, there's something called Background Sounds. Turn that on and you can choose from a variety of different background sounds and it will just continuously play in a loop. Now here's one that may seem anti-productivity, but hear me out. You take your keyboard and you put it away, turn it off, put it in a drawer, put it in another room. But how are you supposed to be more productive if you don't have your keyboard? Well, the idea here is for most people, you can dictate faster than you can type, but only after you practice dictation. But it's hard to practice dictation when your keyboard is right there and so easy to reach out and type with. So you get rid of the keyboard and force yourself to dictate. This, of course, works best if you need to do a writing task. Now, you don't want to use regular dictation. You want to instead go into System Settings. And then under Accessibility, you want to go into Voice Control. And you want to turn this on. And not only is this better dictation for you to type with, but the commands include a wide variety of things, including editing commands. So you can do some pretty high-level dictation here. But it's really hard to learn this if the keyboard is right in front of you. At first, it's going to be slower. You're going to be less productive. But perhaps after a few days or weeks, you can get really good at it. And at that point, you can start having the keyboard in front of you while you dictate. But if you do like typing, there's an extreme way to do it. You can use a Dvorak keyboard layout. So take a look at this. It looks like a regular keyboard, but notice all the letters are in different places. See, it turns out that the way letters are on a regular QWERTY keyboard, they're not there to optimize typing speed. They're there because all typewriters would get jammed if you hit certain keys too quickly. But it's actually not a very efficient way to type. The Dvorak keyboard is designed to be the best way to type using your fingers. But, of course, it's hard to learn if you have a lifetime of typing with a QWERTY keyboard. However, those that have made the transition are adamant about the fact that they can type faster. And you don't need to actually get a special keyboard for this. You can use your regular keyboard and then just go into System Settings and go to Keyboard. And then under Input Sources here, Edit, and then Add, and then look for the Dvorak keyboard. It's under English and it's near the bottom. So you add this and you can see the new layout there. And your regular keyboard is going to work like this. You're probably going to want to keep a printout or a guide or something like that until you learn to do these without actually looking at the keys. Or maybe just get stickers. Now, I'll give you the idea about hiding your keyboard. Here's one that's just as extreme. Take your mouse or trackpad and put that in a drawer or another room or switch it off. The idea here is to force yourself to use keyboard shortcuts for everything. It's not going to be ideal if you're doing graphics and things like that. But if you find yourself always using the pointer to select menu items when you know a keyboard shortcut will be faster, having your mouse or trackpad hidden away sometimes may force you to learn those keyboard shortcuts and eventually adopt them. Now, another thing people like to do for productivity is to use timers. We, of course, have the Clock app on the Mac. And one of the items you can do here is a timer. So you can set a timer and then it will count down. You don't even have to keep the app shown here. It will show you here in the top. And the idea here is to time yourself doing tasks. So if you decide you're going to write for 15 minutes, you can set a timer for 15 minutes and then write knowing that you really shouldn't be doing anything else during that time. You just concentrate on writing and your Mac will tell you when the 15 minutes is up. You can also use timers to remind yourself to take breaks. The idea here is to not just have breaks whenever you feel like it, but to keep working until a timer expires. So you can say, I'm going to take a break in 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or whatever, and then you keep working knowing your Mac's going to tell you when break time is. And then you could set another timer for 10 minutes to let you know when the break time is over. And one last item, and this is going to sound pretty extreme. It's called time tracking. And this is something I actually did at one point. It's really interesting. So the idea here is you either use a piece of paper or you could use the Notes app. And when you start doing a task, you record the starting time and what task it is. So let's say I'm going to check email. And I just go about checking my email. When I'm done checking email, I then record the end time and start a new line here with whatever task I'm working on. There are two benefits to this. One is you become keenly aware of what you're spending time on. The other one is that it helps you focus on tasks. How? Well, let's say that you start checking your email. And right in the middle of checking your email, you remember that you wanted to check a web page for something. But in order to do that, you're going to have to basically clock out of email and then start with that new task here and then go back to checking email on the next line. And this seems really messy. So what you're going to probably do instead is continue checking email, not let yourself get interrupted. And this isn't the kind of thing that you need to just keep doing forever. Some people find it useful to do it for, say, a few weeks, and then it really changes how they work and creates better habits that they can then carry forward without having to keep doing time tracking. So there's some pretty extreme ideas. I don't expect anybody to ever even contemplate adopting all of these, but maybe one or two might be useful to you even for a short period of time, or they might give you ideas about some other things you can do to improve your productivity. So I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.